price system.
Well, yes. And I think part of what you're going to be doing, seeing there is this recent CMS release of the moratorium from specialty hospitals. If the specialty hospitals, I mean, everybody that you read of lately, there's going to be this onslaught of specialty hospitals taking the more profitable procedures out of the community hospitals, therefore putting the community hospitals in more harm's way. I think there's going to be some kind of shakeout from that standpoint, and it's going to be addressed in the same manner as reimbursement.
I think with the new IPPS ruling, though, with the new reimbursement, they are squarely looking at the freestanding facilities. Mm-hmm. I think the reimbursement will not be as lucrative in the future as it has been for the freestanding facilities.
But you notice they said they don't anticipate that that's going to be a problem or a diminishing effect on them. They're going to continue to be a proliferation, even though it's going to be weighted in the future, severity weighted.
When we talk about healthcare, there's a tendency in this country, especially among healthcare professionals, to demonize pharmaceutical companies. Should they be?
No.
It's a free enterprise system.
I mean, they're making a product that people want.
Well, they need. Pharmaceutical companies have done great things for patient care over the years and continue to do that. Their research and new drugs they're terrific. So no, they're not terrible companies. They're great companies. I think it's the same type of arguments that we've talked about with medical devices. You know, are their profits too high? You can buy drugs outside the United States, same drug, much cheaper than you can in the United States. So why is the United States subsidizing the world's health care? I mean, there's a lot of issues there, but they're certainly not the bad guys. You know, it's just part
I was reading coming down here today that the study was done by Harvard, talking about $19,900 per year is what we paid for each year of extended life. And it's trying to, although there's a lot of pros and cons of whether it's a good study or not, I think, again, we're back to that effort even with pharmaceuticals, because they are attributing that to the drugs that have been developed over the last 40 years that has extended the life. Mm-hmm. And it has actually been very cheap at that level for $19,900 per person per year of extended life. Well worthwhile.
Okay. Let me, if I can, Doctor, I'll let you in just a second, but let me invite those of you who have been a terrific audience thus far to chime in. We have several different microphones placed throughout the room, and when different comments have been made, I've heard murmurings from certain parts of the room, so here's an opportunity to actually get up and if not ask a question, certainly express your own opinion, and we'll go to those microphones when there's an individual who's ready, willing, and able to make. We got somebody out there already. Highly opinionated crowd, that's what we like. Let's go out there. Yes, sir.
How are you? John Morkovich from St. Anthony's in Missouri. I've been in healthcare for 30 years, and one of my biggest concerns, I agree with about reimbursement, it's really upside down, it's crazy. When you talk about the finance of hospitals to other people, they shake their head and say, how can you continue with that? But here's a question that's sort of outside. What is the AMA going to do as a lobbying body to go after the insurance companies that constantly deny care?
Is that the AMA's job?
I don't know whose job it is. I just spoke to a patient of mine the other day who had a total joint, and he told me, Doc, I just got a bill for $2,000 for my physical therapy. And I said, how is that possible? You have an insurance and you have an HMO. Why are you getting this $2,000 bill? You know what he told me? Well, every time I go do a visit, I have to pay $60. So I went to my office manager and said, what is a charge to the patient every time they go to therapy? Guess what the charge is? Around $60. So they're selling insurance to this fella. He's paying $500-600 a month, but yet, you know what the copay for that insurance was? $60, which is what the payment for the entire visit was. So basically, he has insurance, has a catastrophic insurance, but everyday usage for office visits, by the time they do all these deductibles, they're basically paying all their own health care.
Do you think, Karen, that it would do any good for, be it the AMA or be it anybody, to go after the healthcare companies? I mean, they're in a business too.
They are in a business, and you know, I think what's interesting is that for the first time in many markets, the payers aren't making much money and the providers aren't making much money. So in some markets, and Boston being one of them, it's actually, it's a very difficult situation between both of them. There's not much money to flow either way. But you started to talk about the individual. I think there is some individual responsibility in this as well. I mean, we've gotten to the point, insurance is literally insurance. It's supposed to be for catastrophic, and we've gotten to the point that in America, we basically think we have free health care once we've paid for our insurance. And so I think that there's some element of responsibility that also falls on the consumer.
I think that there should be some coverage. If you're paying for insurance, I think they should provide some coverage. In other words, he shouldn't be responsible for basically the entire coverage. As far as he knew, that pay must be, because they do usual and customary charges, so that they'll see a bill for $150. In actuality, the contract bill is only $60. So behind the scene, he's actually paying for the entire bill because the contract was only for $60, even though the usual and customary was $150. So that patient basically bought an insurance for purely catastrophic, and had he known that, he might have gone out and bought a true catastrophic insurance for a much cheaper price.
Okay, let me go back to the audience. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Mel Meck from Atlantic Care. I know there's been a lot of talk about the cost of the implant, but there's also a lot of cost opportunity savings in the whole clinical pathway. And I was wondering if there's any opinion on the whole notion of gain sharing to contain costs and reduce them. Thank you.
Well, I'll take that. Number one, if you look at the cost of what we've been talking about, mainly the hip and knee procedure, I think somebody pointed out it earlier, the cost of the implant itself is generally 50 to 60% of the reimbursement you receive for that particular procedure. The other costs, particularly the supply-related costs, are minimal. And so while clinical pathways and coming up with ways to be more efficient is something that should be looked at, but you're probably not looking at being able to make a significant dent in the overall problem. The implant cost is clearly the stick in the eye, if you will, that's causing the problem. In terms of gain sharing, at HCA, we, about a year ago, applied to the United States government for approval of a gain sharing program in the orthopedic area, and just recently we've been notified that we've been turned down, so we're not pursuing that. And I would argue that now, the way the regulations are set out, they are very unclear, very, very vague. It takes over a year to get the government to review and approve a proposal related to gain sharing. And also the experience I would tell you at HCA that was mentioned earlier, doctors we found there wasn't a significant percentage of doctors that were interested in the cash. They were really more interested in how to make the operating room more efficient, how to do some things in terms of investing in new capital equipment, instrumentation, and labor, things like that. So I would say our experience has not been very positive with gain sharing, and unless Congress comes up with a much more simplified, easy to understand methodology, I think it will be limited in its success.
I told you this would go fast. It did. One last question for all of you. If you could change one thing, what would it be? Bill, let's start with you. Bill McIlhargey, former orthopedic manufacturing executive. If you could change one thing to make the system better, what would it be?
I'd find a way to tear down the barriers and get a better collaboration between the stakeholders.
Dr. Sang Choi, if you could change the system one way, what would it be?
I think for me, just like we talked about, efficiencies in the hospitals, because that's what helps me in the long run, helps you guys, and I think it's the best way, is efficiencies for me.
Karen Matjucha.
Complete and total transparency around costs and prices.
No secrets.
No secrets.
Karen Barrow.
Cost-effective quality care, and that is providing quality data for the patients, the physicians, and transparency and cost to go with that. I agree.
And finally, Jim Fitzgerald. Change one thing, what would it be?
First of all, I love everybody's answer, but I would add that in my view, the device manufacturers and hospitals have to find ways to more effectively lobby for better reimbursement, because I do think that's something that we can all agree on, and it's a win-win for all parties involved.
Okay, my thanks to you all. Weren't they terrific? In just a moment, we're going to continue with NCI Talk, a story of a remarkable fiscal turnaround of a healthcare system. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Looking for new